sign up for everything you possibly can. If you're raising money, it's all about that practice, and try to do those things first before you pitch a live investor. So go to 1 Million Cups, go to Toastmasters, a mastermind group of your friends, even if it's not an official mastermind, just like a bunch of friends that like want help, and pitch in front of them first. Definitely don't pitch a potential investor first before you practice.
Hey, RT, so happy to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you, Shannon. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you on because you're such a rare find as an entrepreneur, having a lot of experience in different types of businesses. Right now, running essentially 3 businesses, and I'm sure that you're learning rapidly every day about everything.
Always learning all the time. I appreciate you saying that. And yeah, I don't feel rare, but I guess it is rare to be multi-passionate. So appreciate that.
Well, I think everyone is unique in their own right. And I think that your experience is highly, highly valued. So I'm excited to have you on. And if you could just tell our audience a bit about what you do, what you're up to. They just heard your introduction, but I would love to hear it from you.
Yeah. So high level, I do 3 main things. Vortic Watch Company, vorticwatches.com. We basically take antique American pocket watches and turn them into one-of-a-kind wristwatches. I started that company in college almost 10 years ago. And just running a wristwatch manufacturing company, selling mostly online. So that's my number one thing, foundational thing. That's where I started. And that's my big one. And then I have Carter Custer Agency, which is a full service ad agency I started with my friend Jim Carter, who I met in Fast Foundations Mastermind, which is my third thing. Jim and I, as part of our agency, purchased this mastermind program about 6 months ago. And we put on these awesome mastermind cohorts, I guess you could call them, every 5 months, and plan to do that in perpetuity. So those are my 3 things.
Yeah. And a special place in my heart for Fast Foundations. I was in 2 rounds of Fast Foundations and then was a coach for 1 round alongside you guys. So I'm really excited to be associated with that brand and see what you're doing with it. It's really awesome.
Thank you. It's an honor and a privilege. We're having fun.
Awesome. That's the best part, right? It's all about having fun. So a few of the things that we were talking about as we were thinking about what to share with our listeners on this interview. One was around raising capital. This is something that is honestly not talked about enough. I feel like there's a bit of a mystery for some of the, especially earlier stage entrepreneurs who know that they want to scale bigger, take on investors, fund their big idea. And it can feel intimidating, like they're out of their league. Talk to that a little bit in terms of your experience, lessons, mistakes you're grateful for, and what that looks like.
Well, first you got to be grateful for all the mistakes, because that's how we learn and grow, and is through failure. And one thing that I've tried to learn, and I'm still learning every day, I think, is failing small and failing quickly, so that we can learn quickly and learn in small doses, and not fail too big, so that we can keep the momentum. But yeah, so for Vortic Watch Company, I've raised over $1 million in equity-based financing. We started the company on Kickstarter, so I'm familiar with crowdfunding as well. And then I've also raised, $3 million in financing, basically bank-related debt financing. And so I feel like raising capital has been a part-time job my entire life, at least my adult life, running this company. And that's just been a necessity. Running a very, manufacturing a watch in the United States is expensive. It's very difficult to do what we do. And so we needed a lot of capital to do so. And it all starts with the art of the pitch. And that's something that I really don't say that I'm like an expert in anything. I really prefer breadth of knowledge versus depth of knowledge. But if you had to ask, like, what's the thing that I feel the most confident doing, it's asking people for money, especially in front of a room pitching. I love it. It lights me up. I have a blast. You're always nervous when you do it. I just did it again last week. I won a $250,000 advanced manufacturing grant from the state of Colorado. I had 5 minutes to pitch entrepreneurs in Colorado that are like this board for the state funding, and we won. So it's always nice to get instant gratification like that. You don't always get it, but it all starts with that pitch, the pitch deck, the presentation, your financials, and just honestly, like being confident and passionate about what you do and standing in front of the people, whether it's on a Zoom call with just one investor or banker, or in front of a room of hundreds, like I've done a few times. You have to know your numbers. You have to be ready for anything. You have to answer any question that you get in some way. And I think all of that comes from, if you have a really genuine passion for what you do, then it all comes from the heart. And you're not making anything up. You can be extremely transparent, authentic, genuine, and it can be fun and not stressful.
And I know there are folks listening thinking, I'm passionate. I believe in what I'm doing, but I am effing terrified of the idea of standing up for, like what you said was fun. I can actually hear people listening and going, okay, I'm glad that's fun for you. But yep. That sounds absolutely terrifying for me. What is the advice you have for folks who maybe are less inclined to call it fun to get up in front of a room and ask for money?
Yeah. And that's fair. And that's common. I mean, I think it's the number one fear, is public speaking, right? And especially when you're public speaking and asking someone for money is even worse. So I feel that the advice is practice. You have to practice a lot, and the best practice is just by like taking action in terms of making that pitch deck, making your presentation, making your business plan, writing your financials. Try to do it all yourself, the most, the best you possibly can. Get 80% of the way there and then ask for advice. And it's the same in practicing anything. It's like practice in private first so that you don't embarrass yourself, because it is hard. It is embarrassing. Speaking, you're going to stumble over your words all the time. You have to get over what your voice sounds like. You just have to, like when I was practicing for this thing last week, I did a couple Zoom calls with friends, and I just like pitched to myself on Zoom, and they were like, "Hey, you missed this. You didn't do that." Stuff. So, practice by yourself first. Build everything you can, be it your pitch deck, your business plan, your financials, all that kind of stuff. Get it most of the way done, and then start asking anyone like me, that has done it before, if they can spare 10 minutes to hear your pitch and give you feedback, and then just do that a lot, as many times as you can before you actually pitch, a live audience or a real investor. It's just practice.
Yeah. Or get on Shark Tank, right?
Right. That's the ultimate practice.
It is.
For sure.
And it's funny enough, I actually tell entrepreneurs to go watch that show too, because you realize what questions are coming up. And if you can understand the questions that, let's say, Mark Cuban asks or Lori asks, then I have to be ready for something like that. Now, it's obviously not that high scale, and that is somewhat scripted, I'm sure, but there's a lot of stuff to learn about. Like you mentioned the financials, which of course is near and dear to my heart as an accountant, saying, yes, it's important for you to know your numbers. But this is on a whole new level in terms of not just being able to know your numbers, but be able to answer questions about your numbers and know how they interact with the decision of your investor. What do you do? What are some of your tips to prepare if someone feels like, I don't know this stuff off the cuff just yet? How would they best prepare themselves for, let's say, a bigger pitch?
Absolutely. So I love the idea of telling people to watch Shark Tank. If you watch, like probably you have too, and I definitely have, basically every episode, you'll see that they ask the same questions. Every single investor has the same 10 questions that they always ask. And so you have to be prepared for those questions. A lot of it comes down to financials and knowing your numbers. And that's why I say try to build as much of it yourself before you get help, because you'll just become familiar with the numbers because you made them. You made your business plan. You made your financial projections. You at least did the bulk of the effort before you got feedback, advice, and had somebody else change it. There's a ton of resources online on YouTube, on different courses and stuff like that. I built a business plan course that's now part of Fast Foundations. I'm teaching all kinds of stuff like that, and the art of the elevator pitch, the pitch deck, and I built a lot of that stuff because I just get those questions all the time. But I use those same and similar resources that I had in a local thing here in Denver, Colorado, called Rocky's Venture Club. And Rocky's Venture Club is a group of 300 angel investors, and they invested in Vortic Watch Company years ago, but only after I went to what they call pitch practice like 5 times. And they do this like accelerator 1-day pitch practice thing where they walk you through, they call it like the 13 P's of preparation, which I'm not going to remember off the top of my head, but like there's all these things you can do to prep. Then you like literally practice your pitch in front of them. They usually say, you typically have 5 minutes to pitch. And so they're like, go 5 to 10 slides, and then they walk you through like how to figure out those slides. So if you're in Colorado, I highly recommend Rocky's Venture Club. And if you're elsewhere, I'm sure those resources exist virtually in some way, like pitch practice events, courses, all that kind of stuff. And if you totally strike out, send me a DM on Instagram and I'll help you find it.
Yeah, that's such good advice. And public speaking in general, you've got, Toastmasters, right? And other resources just to overcome the public speaking side. And then when it comes to persuasive pitching, that's so important to get help on that area. I think a lot of the times too, we just work ourselves up too much into thinking, oh, I have to have all this stuff ready. You have to have a good grip on it, have conviction, have confidence, and know, like you said, know your numbers, but know your business inside and out, where you can explain the why, the how, the what. And usually that comes across in people trusting you.
100%. And the best way to get people to trust you is to be authentic and genuine. And if you can tell a story instead of just read the slides, then you will have exponentially better results. So I always say read Building a Story Brand by Don Miller. Massively changed my life when I read that about a decade ago. Start with Why by Simon Sinek was another great book that helped me with a lot of that stuff. And then to your point, Toastmasters is big. 1 million cups is something that happens all over the country, and you can go pitch there. My feedback around all that stuff is sign up for everything you possibly can. If you're raising money, it's all about that practice, and try to do those things first before you pitch a live investor. So go to 1 million cups, go to Toastmasters, go to, I don't know, like a mastermind group of your friends, even if it's not an official mastermind, just like a bunch of friends that like want to help and pitch in front of them first. Definitely don't pitch a potential investor first before you practice.
Well, it goes back to your point you mentioned when we first started chatting, which was it fail small and fail fast?
Yep.
Yeah. Fail small.
Yep.
Tee yourself up for as many small failures as you possibly, if they're wins, fantastic. But if they're small failures, then you're just going to learn from them rapidly and go on to the next one. And that's so important.
It's important. And it's really, it's a huge learning experience too, because when I did that, I was first pitching initially, and I was pitching, 1 million cups several times. That was here locally, and I'm in Fort Collins, Colorado, and there was probably 25 people in the room. And the first time I made some good connections. I just met some other entrepreneurs in the area that I wouldn't have met otherwise. Learned a lot from them over the years. Really, I still know some of those people that saw me at that first 1 million cups presentation, and got amazing feedback that's totally unfiltered because they don't know you. There's nothing to lose. Like, they're just going to tell you what they think. And when you go back and pitch again a year or two later, and those potential investors in the room, because there's always one, they see the progression in you, and they're like, oh my gosh, you took my feedback, you did it, and now you're awesome. Take my money. That happens to me all the time now. Of just like, hey, I remember when you were basically like, I remember when you were a kid and you were pitching all this kind of stuff. And they mean it in the best way, but they're just like, you've come a long way, and I am now ready to invest. This is cool.
Yeah, they see the progression, but they also see your potential being realized, right? They know you have potential. They'll give you feedback. And then you start realizing that, and they say, they can be trusted with my feedback. They can be trusted with this input. And again, it anchors back into trust where that just builds more of it. And that's clearly an indicator for me as a mentor, as well as someone who could invest, right? I'm
Yep.
saying, yeah, take my money if you're willing to listen to me.
100%. And it's funny because investors work exactly the same as bankers.
Yeah.
And you never want to show the bank that you truly want to get a big loan from should not be the first bank you walk in the door and pitch. And pitching banks is very different. It's usually private and excruciatingly painful because
Yeah.
they ask for everything.
Yeah.
And so I did not take that advice initially. And I started with the big banks, like Chase and things like that when I was first pitching banks. And huge failures, just massive waste of time. Like a big bank is not going to give a brand new entrepreneur a huge loan. But I used that as practice. I learned a lot. They gave me a ton of homework. They said, if you do this, this, and this over the next 2 years, then we could totally make a loan like this. And I went out and I executed that stuff, and I came back this time to smaller banks, built relationships with them after a few meetings. The first meeting I ever had with a smaller local bank, I said, hey, I'm probably not ready for a loan. I realize that, but I just want to start the conversation and see if we can make friends and see if you can help me understand what I need to do. And when you start a conversation with a banker like that in transparency, they are like, okay, this entrepreneur knows what's up. They're being real. They're not coming in here thinking that they deserve this loan because they're working hard. Like, they actually know that this is a long process and they're taking it seriously.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what banks want to see. They want to see, because they're in it for the long run. They're like, most of those loans are 10, 20 years long. So they
Right.
want to make sure you're going to keep coming back.
Well, yeah. And if you approach it with humility and a little bit of the, I may not be ready yet, or even saying, I want to be a really good customer for you. I want to be
Mhm.
a good, loyal customer as a business owner. And I eventually want to apply for a loan with you. How do I go about being a good customer and putting them in the driver's seat to actually tell you
Yep.
what it will take? And I think that ego gets in the way, other things get in the way. But I think that one of the best skills you can have as an entrepreneur is the humility to ask, how do I get what I want?
Mhm.
In a very polite way, obviously, but how can I, insert thing that you necessarily want, but also how can I be a good customer to you? How can I be a good provider for you? How can I do this? And let people just tell you what to do.
Yeah, 100%. And they're going to tell you the basics, which is open a checking account, put your direct deposit of your current full-time job, hopefully in there, and
Mhm.
your entrepreneurship is a side hustle. That's how it was for me at first. And then show us that you can make payments. So I know the first small bank I started with, I got a home equity line of credit for like 20 grand. And I got it. I didn't really need it. And so I just used it for different things. And then I paid it off right away. And so by the time I applied for a bigger loan, they had like 18 months worth of checking deposits and these HELOC up and downs on me. And they were like, okay, cool. Yeah, we know who you are. You pay your bills on time. And I set it all up automatically, right? I was building my credit the whole time. They always ask about credit, so make sure you don't mess that up. And then yeah, by the time I actually applied for the loan, like I was on first name basis with the branch manager and the bank manager, and it was just a lot easier because they felt like they were helping me, not I was coming to take money from them.
Yeah, that's so crucial. Switching gears for a second as we're kind of wrapping up here, and I can't help but notice that you run two very distinct companies. You have one that's a product business that you've built up, and one that's really a service-driven business with a team. Uh, what are your favorite elements of each, or unique skills that you've had to tap into as you kind of switch between them? I know multi-passionate, but there's so many different skills and different abilities that I think you have to exhibit in both of those scenarios, not to mention knowledge. So could you shed some light on what it's like to do both?
Absolutely. So running a physical product business, especially one like us where we manufacture the product in house, is all in person. So for my first, 8 years of being an entrepreneur, everyone that worked for me saw me basically every day. We had, we had and still have an office, a manufacturing facility. Like everything had to be local because we were manufacturing these watches and then packing and shipping them and all that kind of stuff. I was really the only employee that could be, traveling and remote because I don't actually touch any of the product, but everyone else had a hand literally in making it. And so I got good at leading and managing people and managing a business by literally and physically being there. And then when I started an agency, most ad agencies are completely remote at this point. And so that was a completely different change. And especially with the pandemic, just like we started it in 2020. And so like it all had to change really quickly. And that was a new and different challenge. And it's still a challenge, to be honest. It's much more difficult to manage people and hold people accountable without micromanaging virtually when most of your team is remote. You need a lot more software and tools and things like that to know what people are doing and when they're doing it. And so lots and lots of challenges, lots of learning in there, pros and cons to both for sure. I definitely personally prefer all in person. I love having an office. I love having a team. I love water cooler conversations, right? Like, we're building a new building downtown here so that we can do just that and have, most of our people in the same place, now. But yeah, massive learnings from that. And, I wouldn't say one is better than the other in any way. But one is definitely better for me. And I've learned that by trying it, right? Fail small and see what happens. So I've tried all these things and I know I'm a much better leader when I can sit in front of you in person and have a conversation, than I am when it's virtual. And so now I just try to optimize everything I can around that and give people FaceTime when needed. The open door policy is easier physically, but there are ways you can do that virtually, and we're exploring all those.
Yeah, and I think to your point, it really comes down to understanding what you prefer to do and where you show up better,
Mhm.
because there isn't a right or wrong or a better or worse. It's really, how do you optimize your energy and your output and your impact, your results, right?
Yeah, 100%. And that's what that looks like for me is, Vortic Watch Company is all or mostly all in person and probably will be for most of its existence. And then our agency is mostly remote. So for the agency, have almost no direct reports. And I was really upfront with my business partner, Jim, of just like, I'm not good at managing people if they're not standing right in front of me. And so let's just not do that. um,
I
and
love
so
that
we,
though. I love that
we
you're
have
conscious of that, you know?
well, you have to be, right. And once you learn something about yourself, you can't forget it. Like you have to keep bringing it up with yourself and make sure you don't mess that up again. Cause now I know like this is one of my skill sets and I have to take advantage of that. Otherwise, I'll fail and I'll fail others. Right. And I'll fail very valuable people. And so we have a core leadership team that we meet with all the time, and about half of them are in Colorado and half of them are remote. And so we give them a lot of FaceTime, and they get a lot of my time in those leadership meetings. But I have I think as of next month, I won't have any direct reports at all for that company, which is hard to get there. But once you get there, like I said, that just works for me. And what works for me works for the business if you do it right.
Yeah. And I think that's also a good reminder to anyone who's trying to grow and scale, that you don't have to do it like anyone else does it. And you don't have to take that as a signal that something's better or worse, that you're progressing, regressing, that learning how you operate best is the win. And being able to fulfill on that is really how you get the results that you want and you optimize for everyone. Because I know a lot of folks who probably would let their ego get in the way and say, well, I should have direct reports. I'm, a co-owner and I should be, should, right? And I love that because I'm the same way. I've learned how I manage best. And I used to manage a team of 10 in my corporate job. And I learned how I best communicate. And I say, and I actually wasn't in person. I love managing remotely. I love giving autonomy, but I also had very strict cadences on meetings and other things. I said, because that's what works for me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what works for my teams, which also they seem to appreciate. So it's really about self-awareness. And that's the key thing as any entrepreneur.
100%. And the best way to learn all that kind of stuff and figure out like what is normal and do I have to be normal and is it okay to do things totally my way, is through masterminds. When I joined Fast Foundations, and it's why I wanted to buy Fast Foundations when the Harders said they weren't doing it anymore, because I realized like by surrounding myself with other like-minded entrepreneurs going through the same stuff, I got so many ideas, and I looked up to people, and I met people that managed completely remote teams, and I admired them. And I was just like, I don't know how you do it. Tell me how you do it. And they just tell you in a mastermind, right? You're all in there to help each other.
Yeah.
And God, I learned so much stuff. And now it's such a, like I said, it's an honor and a privilege to lead Fast Foundations Mastermind, because it's just like it's so cool to watch those light bulbs go off for other people.
Yeah, it's huge. And the same goes too, where I was like, how do you do a product business?
Yep.
You offer the same value in exchange, and it's wonderful. I love it. So RT, I really enjoyed this conversation with you and learning more about, pitching, the art of self-awareness, the art of presenting, and what you've done to be successful in your businesses. Tell the folks listening how they can learn more about what you're up to, maybe the mastermind or Carter and Custer. Some of the entrepreneurs who are listening may be interested in any of your companies. Make sure they're linked in the show notes, by the way. But tell us where we can find you hanging out.
For sure. So I'm RT Custer, like Robert Thomas Custer, on Instagram and LinkedIn. You can DM me on either one of those platforms. Super easy. Vortic Watch Company is vorticwatches.com. That's VORTIC watches.com. We have Carter and Custer Agency, and that's carterandcuster.com. And then finally, fastfoundations.com for Fast Foundations Mastermind.
Yeah. And again, we'll have all those links in the show notes for you. Thank you so much, RT, for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and all your wisdom to share with our audience today.
Thanks, Shannon. Appreciate you.